I'm excited to share some inspiration with you featuring the Christmas release from Tailored Expressions for 2025. The set in particular that I'm going to be creating with today is the Postmark North Pole Collection, and I decided to combine it with some previously released products. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'm sharing some bonus cards for inspiration. If you're interested in any of the supplies I'm using today, they will be linked down below in the video description. Now let's take a look at the supplies I'm using. The Postmark North Pole Foilet and Stencil, Postmark Cutting Plate, Holly Jolly Hellos Stamp and Die, the Twinkle Twinkle background, Ho 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 Holidays Stencil and Die, Happy Mail, Build a Scene Rolling Hills, and the mini bows. I'll be using the foil Magic Shim and Transfer Carrier along with Champagne Fun Foil. For cardstock, I'm using the 6x6 pack of Sugar Cube cardstock, White Glitter cardstock, Brussels Sprout cardstock, Sugar Cube, Watermelon, and Honeydew Melon. For ink, I have Honeydew Melon, Brussels Sprout, Peaches and Cream, Cherry Pop, Earl Grey, Dijon, Oat Milk, Watermelon, and VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. Additional supplies is the large and mini Misty, the TE embossing mat, large pair of scissors, my repositionable tape, Scotch tape runner, craft pick, reverse tweezers, liquid glue, Post-it tape, the glassboard buddy and my glassboard work surface, removable tape in my teal dispenser, thin foam squares, and my bitty blending brushes. I'm going to start by foiling some panels. Now I'm going to be using the Fuse foiling system, but if you have the Mini Mink, you can use that. I hit the button to the number 3 setting and let that warm up. I have 2 panels picked out from the Foilables Postmarked North Pole Collection, and I'm going to trim a piece of Champagne Fun Foil to be the size of my foilable panel. I'm going to use a large pair of scissors to trim my foil as I find that is easiest. I'm going to take that trimmed out piece of foil, flip it over to the back side, and I am going to buff over the back of the foil and over the front of the foilable panel with a Swiffer cloth to remove any dust. I'll then take my foil, place it over the design so my pretty side of the foil is facing up and my foilable panel is facing up, and I'm going to place this into my carrier sheet. Now I know everybody does theirs just a little bit differently. I am going to use the shim for this, so I'm going to place this into the carrier sheet, and then I'm going to place that shim over the top of my foil. Everybody's machines work a little bit differently, so I do suggest to experiment with yours to find out what works best for you. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to put the folded side edge first and feed it through the Fuse foiling system. Now when that comes out, I'm going to flip it over and run it through again. Once this comes out, I am going to take it out and let it sit for about 20 seconds and let that cool off. Then I can remove the panel from my carrier sheet. Again, still giving that a second to cool. And I remove the foil. I have a perfectly transferred design. Now everything that was black is covered in a beautiful champagne foil. I foiled the other panel off camera using those same steps. Now I'm going to ink blend over the top of one of those panels, and I'm using the Postmark North Pole Collection to do that. I'm going to start with Stencil 1, and on each of those foilable panels, there are some squares that foiled as well, and I'm lining up the squares of the stencil with the squares that are foiled. I'm starting out with the color Cherry Pop and a bitty blending brush, and I'm going to go over all of the open areas of the stencil. I'm holding my stencil down with some Post-it tape, so any type of low-tack tape. And then before I remove it, I'm going to spray a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel and just clean up around the edges on my glass work surface so I don't transfer any of that red ink onto the next stencil. I can then remove the first layer of the stencil, and I'm going to place the second layer over the top, once again lining up those squares on the left and right hand side. The second color I'm using is Peaches and Cream, again using a bitty blending brush. I'll fill in all of those open areas of the stencil, remove the Post-it tape to reveal this second portion, and I love these two colors together. The third layer of the stencil is one of my new favorite Christmas colors, and that's Honeydew Melon. I use that a lot throughout my cards and also my card bases. Again, just applying that color through the open areas of the stencil. Remove that third layer, place the fourth layer over the top, and for this I'm coming in with Brussels Sprout ink. So each of these colors provides a beautiful contrast between each other. Now, once I have this panel entirely blended, I'm going to remove the stencil, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and just gently place it over the top, and also just do some light circular motions over the foiled areas to remove any excess ink. And now we have a beautiful background design with lots of shine. I'm going to take the postmark cutting plate, line it up over the coordinating design, hold it down with the Scotch removable tape, and run this through my die cut machine. And that's going to die cut out all of those designs. I can use my craft pick to pop all of those out of the die cutting plate. And now that I have those all out, I am going to start creating a mailbox for some of my postcards to go into. First, I'm going to pick out which designs I want to use and have sticking out of my mailbox. Then I'm going to gather up the rest of these and I'm just going to put them in a little dish, which happens to be the Scrub-A-Dub Bud. It was just the perfect size to fit all of those designs. Now I'm going to take the two pieces for the mailbox. I'm die cutting that out of watermelon cardstock. And then that extra piece that's going to go on the front of my mailbox, I'm going to die cut from honeydew melon cardstock. There is a little stamp that is included in this set, and I want to stamp on the front of my mailbox. So I placed that honeydew melon cardstock piece into my mini Misty, and I'm stamping the word post on the front of that using some VersaFine Nocturne ink. I'm going to add some Scotch tape to the back of that honeydew melon cardstock and place this on the front of my mailbox, the piece that has the slit, because that's going to be the piece of our mailbox that's going to be in the front. I'm going to decorate the front of my mailbox just a little bit, and I'm using the Mini Bows die set, and I die cut that out of Brussels sprout cardstock. So I went ahead and I picked out a small bow. I'm adding a dot of liquid glue to the back of it and placing that right above the little keyhole on the front of my mailbox. I can now go ahead and add my letters so that they're peeking out of the mailbox. So I added tape runner to the back side, and then I'm going to go ahead and start tucking in some of those postcards, looking like the mailbox is just stuffed full with Christmas letters and letters to Santa. The Scotch tape gives me a little bit of wiggle room to be able to adjust these so that they fit just perfectly. I added thin foam squares to the back of my mailbox, and I'm placing that on top of that base piece, so there's a little bit of lift and dimension to it. I decided I wanted to create a little scene to go with my mailbox, and I'm using the Ho 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 Holidays stencil and die. I really just wanted the Santa out of the set, but I am going to go ahead and ink blend the other half of it as well and just save that for a future project. So I started by ink blending with watermelon ink. And then I came in with a little bit of cherry pop just on the one side of the Santa. For the white areas of Santa, I am using oat milk ink to add the trim of his hat and the little pom-pom. For the face, I'm coming in with peaches and cream, just whatever was left over on my brush, and a little bit of Dijon for the belt buckle. For the boots, belt, and gloves, I'm going to use Earl Grey. I'm going to die cut the images out with the coordinating die, just holding them in place with the removable tape. And when I die cut the Santa, I die cut another one from some plain white cardstock and layering these two pieces together with liquid glue just to give my Santa some stability. I can move on now to creating the background, and for that I'm going to be using the Twinkle Twinkle background. I'm going to place this into my Misty. I had already removed that foam insert because it is a red rubber stamp. And then I'm using the Honeydew Melon cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to stamp it with Honeydew Melon ink for a tone-on-tone look. It's kind of fun to create sky backgrounds using non-traditional colors. Now, while I had my Misty out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sentiment, which is actually what inspired me to use the Ho 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 Holidays set. This is the Holly Jolly Hello stamp set. So I'm stamping that in VersaFine ink onto Sugar Cube cardstock. I die cut it out 2 more times from white cardstock, and I'm adding liquid glue to the top of those plain white cardstock pieces. I'm going to pick up my stamped piece and layer them together. Now, one last thing I need for my scene is something to ground everything. So I have white glitter cardstock, and I'm trimming out using the Build-A-Scene Rolling Hills, laying that over the top or running it through the die cut machine. And now I can start building my card. So I have a side folding card base that I added tape runner to and placed my background over the top. I can add my glittery snow onto the bottom of the cardstock using a tape runner, and then I can start bringing in my mailbox. I'm adding a foam strip to the back of my mailbox just to pop that up a little bit and set that apart from the scene. I'm going to start adding my Santa, and I trimmed down some of those foam strips to fit alongside the one edge of the Santa. So the part that is going to be overlapping the mailbox, I'm using liquid glue. I'm going to add the sentiment as well using a mix of those foam strips trimmed down into smaller sizes and the liquid glue and placing that so it's slightly overlapping the Santa hat. So that finishes off my card project here. I love this cute little scene with that Christmas mailbox and all of those postcards and letters sticking out at the top. Here is one of the bonus cards that I created, still die cutting out each of those individual designs and then layering them and creating a design on the front of my card. I have the tweed background stamped in Brussels sprout ink on the Brussels sprouts cardstock. Again, using that honeydew melon cardstock. I have the A2 postage stamp stackables and the A2 layers stackable. The third card that I have for you is where I took the postage type looking designs and I placed them on top of an envelope. And then I have the little letters sticking out like letters to Santa. So for this one, I used the mini envelope die, the love letters set, the plaid background, which is stamped in honeydew melon ink on the honeydew melon cardstock. And then I again used the A2 postage stackables and A2 layer stackables. And there you have 3 designs using the Postmarked North Pole Collection. I hope you enjoyed this inspiration as much as I enjoyed creating it. You can find all of these products available over at tailoredexpressions.com. Here is another video you may be interested in.